Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder All Weather here. These storms look to be non-stop as we head into the month of June. So we got a lot to cover in this update. Taking a look at the satellite picture this morning, we have yet another convective complex. It's literally blowing up across Illinois. They have numerous tornado warnings and very high winds inundating that region. And then even further south, we had a convective complex that blew up across portions of Texas into the overnight into southeastern areas of Oklahoma as well as into Arkansas. Now that mesoscale convective systems are going to be highlighted across areas of western Tennessee with their own heavier thunderstorms and a lot of lightning associated with this. And this is just the beginning stages of what's to come of yet another very active day ahead. So if we take a look at the setup on the hazard map this morning, we've got flood watches with that mesoscale convective systems moving across Iowa. Pretty intense storms, severe thunderstorm watch in place, but we also have numerous tornado warnings and actually several embedded tornadoes unfolding with 70 to 80 mile per hour winds with the convective complex that will be highlighted moving across into the morning hours. Further south, you can definitely see the heat really building, and that is excessive heat warnings, folks. That is for your dew points really elevated to make the heat indices well above the triple digit mark, even oppressive mark over 110 degrees, what it feels like to the body. And if we take a look at the dew points later on this afternoon, we are going to be watching another little shortwave that will be coming across that subtropical jet and the very active dry line that will be setting up across Texas as well as into Oklahoma. We've got all that soupy warm air mass just surging in out of the Gulf of Mexico. That's hitting some mid 70 dew points out here. And that is just going to be setting the stage along with the convergence of that short wave as well as into peak heating around 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. We are going to watch supercell thunderstorms start to explode into that very high heat index environment. Very rare to see this late in this late in May to see something like this as far as heat indices goes. That's not a misprint, folks. That's 114, 115 degrees, what it feels like there in South Texas. These areas have had a lot of rain, even towards the hill country, towards Austin, 110, towards the Dallas-Fort Worth region, 105, 108 degrees, what it feels like before the storms arise, tapping into that warm, soupy air mass. And we do, in fact, have that upgraded, enhanced risk. So there's two areas of concern. One that's actually highlighted across this morning, where we do have that mesoscale convective complex that's going to be inundating areas of northern Illinois. But we also have yet another one that's going to be coming in into the afternoon hours, highlighted across the dry line. We also have an elevated, upgraded, and enhanced risk across southeastern Oklahoma, as well as into the Dallas-Fort Worth region, getting down into portions of the hill country again. And then a slight risk extends all the way into Arkansas, back into Missouri, much of Illinois and Indiana, as well as into western Tennessee, getting into those areas into northern portions of Mississippi. But yeah, I think things get going. Besides the convective complex that comes across this morning, we have yet another little convective complex that's going to be highlighted across Wisconsin, back into those same areas that's going to hit hard this morning into northern and central Illinois, and then lighter amounts as you head into portions of Missouri. But those isolated discrete supercells, those are all going to be intense. There's going to be a few of those, but it doesn't take much. If you're underneath one of those, you are going to get some very large hail associated with it. This gets into that 4 or 5 o'clock time frame, that peak heating. And as that boundary converges with that very high, soupy, higher dew point air mass, we're going to be watching supercell development likely form along the Red River within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then become numerous as we go through that 5 and say 11 o'clock time frame for that 6-hour window. It definitely looks to be a bumpy ride, because if you take a look at the overall satellite index here, yeah, some of these cloud tops are easily going to be approaching 60,000 feet later on this afternoon, tapping into that higher heat index environment. I'm looking for supercell development likely to explode and originate across Wisconsin, back into Illinois, as well as Indiana, getting into those isolated areas into Missouri, back into areas of Arkansas, and getting into southeastern Oklahoma, as well as in north and central Texas, as well as into northeastern areas of Texas through that 5 and so let's say 5 and 11 o'clock time frame this afternoon. And there are going to be looking at some higher wind gusts associated with it. So any little complex like they're seeing this morning where they kind of bow out, out ahead and start to have that bowing feature, that's always indicative. They typically pick up speed like we've seen a lot of these of late. And they also increase the velocities as well as the wind speeds that likely reach on the surface. And some of those could be pretty pronounced across areas of eastern areas of Iowa, getting into much of Illinois here, as well as into Indiana, Wisconsin, portions of Michigan, but further south along that convective complex through Missouri, as well as into southeastern Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas. And yes, there are going to have those higher winds for those areas under that enhanced risk for that north and central Texas region. And it doesn't really end there, because going into tomorrow, we have another little convective complex. So looking at the CAPE values, your convective available potential energy, the heat does not quit. You got 5,000 CAPE values, plenty of fuel to fuel these thunderstorms. And I'm really getting really concerned for those areas across Oklahoma, getting into those Kansas region, as you're going to have upscale growth lifting into the heat of the afternoon. And we're seeing really intense, strong tornado parameters highlighted across Kansas, much of Oklahoma, and getting into portions of North Texas. I do feel a good part of Texas is going to be trapped under more of a stronger cap on Saturday. They're not going to have that today, but they will probably have it on Saturday. I think most of the convergence and most of the intensity of the storms, where they're not going to be able to have that capping in place, as the disturbance is easily going to eat away that capping and erode it. Yes, I'm very concerned about a large scale swath of tornado outbreak across Oklahoma and Kansas getting into Saturday timeframe. So it is going to be one of those days that you need to be on high alert and secure all loose objects and have a safety plan in place well ahead of those storms, because it could be really intense with potentially strong tornadoes and even some long track tornadoes across Oklahoma and Kansas. And we do actually have, in fact, that elevated enhanced risk for a good part of Oklahoma as well as into Kansas. I do feel this will likely be expanded and probably even upgraded to a moderate risk as we get into the morning hours tomorrow before the event. But nonetheless, I'm looking at for those two areas to be on basically high alert for large scale supercell development, very large intense hail, damaging winds, and we are going to have a strong tornado aspect of it too. Right now, the Storm Prediction Center has kind of a narrow window where they do have that 10% hatched risk. I do feel this is going to be easily expanded across a good part of Kansas as well as into Oklahoma. So if you're living in the Dodge City region, much of Oklahoma City, El Reno, Tulsa, those areas into Wichita, back into Topeka, those areas had to be on high alert for a big event coming up on Saturday afternoon into Saturday evening. And looking at the next 2 days, we've got, crazy amounts of mesoscale convective complex originating with those little short waves. And then we have activity across the dry line. And you see the convection really starting to blow up. Anywhere you see the deeper reds here, that's where you're going to see the most intensity of the supercell development. And especially the concerning when you see these lines right here, start to form these straight lines. That's always indicative of likely strong updrafts for an extended period of time. And those could be some longer hail producer storms. They could also be some longer track tornado producing storms across this region. So you're actually seeing numerous supercells highlighted across Kansas, Oklahoma, and in areas of North Texas, putting down some intense updrafts, leaving those good, long track hail swaths, as well as updraft potential to leave tornadic spin up tornadoes as well. So it's definitely going to be a bumpy ride for the next 48 hours, and especially those areas into Kansas as well as into Oklahoma. Look at the shear, pretty much 74 knots. That's really extreme, folks. That is some serious stuff, and I'm telling you, you definitely have to be on high alert across Oklahoma and Kansas. But it doesn't end there, folks. This pattern is crazy active. And going into Sunday, I know this is Memorial Week, and a lot of people have big plans with family and outdoor activities, but you're going to have to be on high alert for supercell development and severe storms. So going into Sunday, we've got another little convective complex. In fact, the same low will actually only intensify as it continues to move northeast, now highlighted across Wisconsin, back into Illinois, getting into those areas of Iowa, back into Missouri, Missouri again. And then further to the south, again, you have that surge of moisture feeding into that atmosphere. And that is just going to set the stage for, yes, even renewed threat for supercell development. Extreme amount of water vapor feeding in off the Gulf there. Looking at the content here, almost pretty much off the chart. Anytime you see purples there, that's a lot of water vapor feeding into that supercell development. And yes, you're going to have a lot more shear at the surface again. And unfortunately, yes, we have yet another enhanced risk for supercell development. And this will likely even be upgraded again to possibly a moderate risk and likely extend even further north. So don't let your guard down further north into Wisconsin, as well as into Grand Rapids here, but especially for those areas across Illinois, Indiana, getting back into those areas into Missouri, back into Western Tennessee, Western Kentucky, and then lighter supercell development as you swing further south, as back into Arkansas. You kind of take a break for those areas into southeastern Oklahoma and a good part of Texas on your Sunday time frame. But yeah, all the instability is going to be draped across the Ohio Valley and getting across the upper Midwest, especially for those areas across Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And I probably can't roll out even earlier in the day Wisconsin, but further to the south, definitely Kentucky, back into Tennessee, and then lighter activity as you fishtail further south into Arkansas, northern portions of Louisiana. And then heading into Monday for your actual Memorial Day, again, we just don't really have like a very strong cold front to push the atmosphere out. It kind of just sits there and it brings in cooler air from the northwest, and you have that warm convective air coming in from the southeast and much of the east there. And it's just that clash in temperatures with the cool air just not able to go any further south. So it just kind of meanders, right? And where it meanders, that's keeps the warm sector alive. And that's why we have yet even another renewed concern for even more severe storms likely further southeast by then, getting into those areas across West Virginia, back into the Carolinas, as well as in a good part of the southeast, and likely further south this time into East Texas, into South Texas, as well as in a good part of Louisiana. This would likely be on the day on Monday. That would probably be a little bit further south, even along those coastal regions, as we head into your Tuesday. But overall, for your Monday time span for that actual Memorial Day, this is where most of the instability would likely be across this region, across a good part of of much of the Mid-Atlantic and much of the Northeast, while a good part of the country actually clears out in a big way, because that cool front comes in and kind of wipes everything out and kind of cleanses the atmosphere. Most of the instability will be highlighted across the Carolinas, much of the Mid-Atlantic, and much of the Northeast by then during your time frame on Monday, which likely extends into the afternoon on a Tuesday. And going forward as we move into next week, you would think we'd be done, right? Yes, no. Unfortunately, we have yet another shortwave that will be coming across, and kind of the same deal, kind of the same deja vu type setup for the plains and much of the southern plains and much of the central plains, where we essentially highlight the middle part of the country again in a soupy environment. And that would set the stage for more storm development as we head into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, going all the way into the month of June. it definitely appears this storm activity will continue to be alive and well pretty much on a daily basis for supercell development somewhere in the country, and very strong activity with all three modes of severe storm. So guys, I will definitely keep you well ahead of the storm on this channel. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after storm.